All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're taking all those Hollywood horror myths you've seen in the movies and throwing them out the window. We're replacing them with something way more fascinating: the highly logical, systemic rules behind spiritual possession. When most of us hear the word possession, we instantly picture spinning heads and complete, total chaos. But what if I told you the unseen world actually operates on incredibly strict, predictable scientific principles? We're going to dive deep into the exact mechanisms of how the spiritual world actually overlaps with our own.
So, right off the bat, I want you to just pause for a second. Seriously, audit your thoughts right now. How are you feeling in this exact moment? Are you stressed out, feeling a little resentful about something, or are you feeling grateful? It brings up a very literal question. Are you tuning into a negative frequency? Because according to the material we're looking at today, there is a totally unseen world of spiritual frequencies constantly overlapping with our daily lives. And guess what? Your mind is the antenna picking up the signal.
This whole concept comes directly from an absolutely fascinating book called The Mystical Laws. And what's so cool about this text is how it completely grounds the supernatural into our everyday reality. It doesn't treat the spirit world like it's some sort of spooky magic. Instead, it frames it as a hidden science with its own literal set of physics. The core argument here is that by actually understanding these laws, we can take real, practical steps to protect ourselves. Okay, so to truly grasp this, we've got to define the core mechanism of possession first. Chapter 2 of the text calls this overshadowing. And this happens when a spirit comes along and overlaps with the soul that's currently living inside a physical body. It essentially acts as a secondary shadow. It's a literal overlapping, sometimes double or even triple layers deep, of two distinct but mathematically very similar souls. But you might be wondering, how in the world did those two souls find each other in the first place? Well, the text proposes that the human mind basically acts like a giant electromagnet. You, me, everyone, we are all essentially walking human magnets. Every single thought, every emotion, every intention we have is constantly sending out a specific magnetic charge. And that charge literally pulls in corresponding entities straight from the spirit world. Which brings us to the absolute cornerstone of everything we're talking about today: the law of same wavelengths. If you want to prevent possession, this is the absolute rule you have to know. This law dictates that you can only attract what matches your exact mental frequency. An outside spirit, it can't just attach to you randomly. No way. They can only overshadow you if your mental wavelength is a perfect match to theirs. The author uses a brilliant, super relatable metaphor to explain this. Think of a television or an FM radio. How does a TV work? Well, broadcast stations are firing signals all around you, literally right through the room you're sitting in right now. But you only get the picture and the sound if your dial is specifically tuned to their channel. The spiritual world works the exact same way. Stations in heaven and hell are broadcasting 24/7, but you only receive their influence if you tune your personal dial to their specific channel. Actually, let me just read this quote straight from the text because it really hammers the idea home. Spirits from the heavenly and hellish realms emit different wavelengths. If a person on Earth matches that wavelength, they connect. Boom. It really is that straightforward. Spiritual overshadowing isn't some random lightning strike of bad luck. It is simply a successful, established connection between your internal dial and an external broadcast. So let's look at the stark difference between these two states of mind. It's practically night and day. On one side, you've got a high-frequency mind. This is powered by gratitude, harmony, and peace. But on the flip side, a low-frequency mind is bogged down by jealousy, constant complaints, and a victim mentality. If you're living your life trapped in those negative emotions, you are actively tuning your receiver to a hostile broadcast. You're practically inviting it in. Let's get a bit more specific on those low-frequency triggers. Because, let's be honest, these are super common everyday habits for a lot of people. Things like envy and jealousy toward a friend, voicing constant complaints, blaming your parents or your boss for where you are in life, just sitting in that victim mentality, or even holding on to incredibly strong attachments to worldly success and grudges. The text identifies these specific mindsets as open invitations. They create the exact wavelength that lets negative spirits connect to you and basically amplify your misery. Now, here is where it gets really interesting. The mental aspect, that's actually only half the battle. Even if your mind is perfectly harmonized, totally positive, and doing great, if you are severely physically exhausted, that actually blocks out heavenly light and leaves you spiritually vulnerable. You simply cannot separate the physical body from your spiritual defenses. They are a package deal. Let's break down how this physical-spiritual connection actually works in practice. When you're in a state of chronic exhaustion, running on fumes, you block the higher energy, basically rolling out the red carpet for negative entities. Plus, when you have physical pain or a localized illness, it creates literal weak spots in your body's energy field. The text actually notes that these weak spots, often located at traditional acupressure points, sometimes called tsubo, can attract lower-tier entities, like animal spirits, to attach right to the exact area where you were hurting.
Okay, so how do we fix this vulnerability? The source is super practical about this, dividing the solutions into temporary fixes and true fixes. Sure, you can use Eastern medicine, eat some garlic, or take ginseng. Those can give you a quick jolt of spiritual energy, kind of like a temporary shield. But the true, absolute, non-negotiable fix? Deep rest, proper nutrition, and just getting enough sleep. You absolutely cannot maintain a strong spiritual defense if you're physically running on empty.
Which brings us to the ultimate solution presented in the book: the creation of a kekai. Kekai is a Japanese term for a spiritual barrier or boundary, and as it's defined here, it's a conscious perimeter you create specifically to protect against the invasion of negative or evil spirits. It's all about actively, intentionally establishing a safe zone around yourself. And just to show you this isn't just some abstract theory, look at how humans have historically built kekai for centuries. Shinto shrines use sacred ropes called shimenawa to block out negative energy. Sumo wrestling rings? They are meticulously outlined with salt and rope to completely purify the space before a match even begins. Religious sanctuaries and temples all over the world are essentially built as physical manifestations of these protective spiritual boundaries. So, taking a cue from all that history, how do you and I build an actionable, modern lifestyle barrier today? Well, it boils down to 3 steps. First, discard those negative mindsets we talked about and actively harmonize your mind. Second, prioritize restoring your physical health through real rest. And third, practice right faith and engage in continuous spiritual study. That third step is a total game changer because you can literally turn your own home into a spiritual fortress. The author points out that by actively reading truth-based books, watching positive media, and practicing self-reflection right in your living space, you generate a massive amount of powerful energy. That energy acts exactly like those sacred ropes we just talked about, creating an impenetrable kekai right inside your house that naturally repels any outside negativity. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this one pivotal question to think about today. What channel is your mental remote control tuned to right now? Remember the law of same wavelengths. You hold all the power here. You can change the channel at literally any moment by shifting away from complaints and jealousy and by finally giving your physical body the profound rest it needs. Take back control of your dial today, build your barrier, and protect your frequency. Thanks for diving into this fascinating material with me, and keep your signals strong.